Oh, welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for another mock draft Monday. And apparently, I need to explain this a little bit better what these mock drafts are. This is not a predictive mock draft. If that's what you're looking for, then look out for my 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. That's why I put the 1.0 after that. Kind of the emphasis of that being more of a professional, more thorough type of mock draft. These Monday mock drafts are more for fun. They are to look at certain scenarios. They're not, like I said, they're not predictive. They're not me trying to say what I would do. I do try to explain which picks are maybe more predictive and which picks are more what I would do, but we all have access to the consensus board. We all know roughly what the most likely scenario that we think as the public is. We also know that that never turns out to be true. There are always surprises along the way, and there's going to be 5 to 7 trades roughly on average throughout the first round as well, which will shuffle things up. And ultimately, it's unpredictable. I'm not going to be able to predict it. So what I'm trying to do here is look at, what if this happened? How might that also then shape the draft? And sometimes it might not even work towards your team's advantage, but don't worry if you don't like what your team got in this draft. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to hear feedback from you. I am always interested to hear, especially now that free agency is gone. Hey, we don't think that that's a need of ours. I know the last video somebody brought up for like Jacksonville that wasn't a need. It wasn't a scenario that I think was the most likely, but it also made me go look back at my needs list and kind of reevaluate exactly how much I thought that I think it was Jacksonville needed a cornerback compared to not. So uh, that is it. Once again, I appreciate you guys very much. All the comments only help the video to be better, so that's great. Let's do a mock draft today. Sometimes, like that last video that I did, I do get a little I do one too many what if scenarios maybe or something where it starts to feel quite unrealistic. That was definitely a fun one. I thought that was pretty clear, based on the thumbnail when you see what teams were taking who at what pick. Obviously, I was having more fun. So in this draft, we got out, as close to the fantasy world as I want to get. We're going to reel it in a little bit outside of, once again, it should be obvious here, but I'll make sure to point them out, a couple of really fun twists that are not based on nothing. I'm not trying to just, say, well, sometimes I might, but I'm not trying to just make up my own rumor and go with it. I'm trying to base this off of some things that I'm hearing out there in the wild, whether they're, good intel or not. I guess we'll find out on draft day. But let's start this draft off, especially here, just sitting in the most realistic realm. Caleb Williams, number 1 to the Chicago Bears. It seems to be as much of a lock as there possibly could be. Washington's coming up next, and talking about going consensus board. This is actually now consensus that Jaden Daniels will be going to Washington. I don't agree with that, but I'll stick with consensus, and ultimately, when we are going to be doing a more grounded consensus take here, it's just going to be 3 wide receivers, 3 quarterbacks here going at the top 3. So Drake May to New England, Jaden Daniels to Washington there, which is going to bring us up to pick 4. And we all know what consensus here at pick 4 is to Arizona. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. However, here's going to be the one really big twist that I'm going to look into and see how this could impact the draft for better or worse, depending on what teams you have. And once again, remember we're going to be doing this drop for Marvin Harrison within the realm that this is just how the NFL teams feel. So no, just because Arizona doesn't pass it up at him on 4 doesn't mean everybody's scrambling to trade up for Marvin Harrison at pick 5. Maybe they're not scrambling to get him till pick 8, 9, 10. We'll see where I land on that. But where this comes from is that recently Brett Coleman on a bootleg a podcast kind of side-eyed and made a comment about Marvin Harrison possibly falling more than we are expecting in this draft, in the real draft. And that was made around like pick 8 or 9, saying like he could be available, he might slip this far, or it seemed to be like he might slip towards the back end of the top 10, I will say. It didn't seem like he was saying, oh my God, he's going to slip out of the first round or anything crazy like that. But just that maybe he slips a little more than expected. And if you think about it, there are people who like Rome Odunze the most. There are people who like Malik Neighbors the most. There's a possibility that maybe things could end like this for Arizona. I'm going to go with Malik Neighbors. Still going to go wide receiver here. Not going to have him trade out either. They're just going to take who they think is the best wide receiver in the draft, apparently, in Malik Neighbors. Since they didn't bring Marquise Brown back, I think that Malik Neighbors would make just as well. Basically, I'm leaning on who I like a little bit more, and consensus is still Malik Neighbors over Rome. We'll see if it's still like that come draft week and everything. A lot of steam, and deservedly so, for Rome Odunze over Malik Neighbors as the wide receiver 2 consensus continues to build. And there's Malik Neighbors didn't partake at the combine, so that doesn't help create more steam or anything. So it could overtake the Malik Neighbors takes. We'll see. That's going to bring us on to pick 5, and here is what everybody is expecting. So first of all, I've been doing this since the beginning of time for the Los Angeles Chargers. Everybody in the NFL knows that they are open to trading back from this spot. I believe that very much so, and I think the Vikings made it very clear recently as they acquired more draft capital. They now have the 23rd pick of the draft as well as pick 11. That they're going to be looking to move up. They might be looking here if Drake, maybe if Drake May is one of their guys, they might be looking to move up to pick 3. And they have the capital to do that now too. In this scenario, maybe they liked Jaden Daniels more. Whatever the case, New England wasn't budging because they like Drake May. They weren't able to get one of these top guys, but they're still able to come here at pick 5 with the Los Angeles Chargers. And this is just one of those, you're going to see this a lot until, I would assume, through draft week. Like, it just makes a whole lot of sense that it appears Minnesota wants to come up for a quarterback and the Los Angeles Chargers want to trade out. And there will be times where I'm sure people will be mocking Minnesota moving up further to get a quarterback, but this will probably be the most common place that you'll see. And in all reality, I don't know how much competition they have. I don't think Denver is really competing to get a quarterback here. Las Vegas could be in this conversation. Maybe they're kind of willing to take the second tier or not grab the first tier of quarterback off of this list. And other than that, a lot of people have things figured out, and it's up to the Giants. Like, are the Giants actually competing to come up here? And if so, what kind of package are they looking to get together? This might be a little bit easy for Minnesota to move up to. So technically, this 11-23 is actually, by the trade charts, plenty enough to get up to pick 5. In fact, if I were to click on this and send a second round back, I bet you it gets accepted by the trade calculator because that's how much more. So this really truly is already paying a decent premium. What I'm thinking, maybe if Minnesota's really, really hammering forward, or if the Chargers are giving them a hard time, or if there's more than just the Vikings coming up here, 2026 second rounder should be able to be enough here to put them over the edge, because I don't think they're going to want to be reaching into this 2025 stuff as much as possible. They also have some other stuff here. Look at this. They don't have one of their own picks from pick 129 on down. That's crazy. So, but I will just prove to you that this is already at a surplus, 11-23, because that second round, that doesn't matter for purposes of this mock draft, and it's just a mock draft after all, and we will not be drafting for next year right away. So the Minnesota Vikings, if it wasn't clear coming up here for J.J. McCarthy in this scenario, seems to be the consensus at this point. What is expected that's going to bring us to pick 6. Nothing too original here from me. This is, my most common take would be Rome Odunze to the New York Giants. Even if Malik Neighbors is still available, I kind of like Rome Odunze to the Giants more than specifically because the team needs. They've already got a bunch of small dudes. They need some height, some weight, some size there in that receiving core for the Giants. So that's the route we're going to go, and they've helped to clear up their offensive line quite a bit too, so that's less of a question mark than it was coming into free agency. It's going to bring Tennessee Titans up onto the board next, and this is where we are going to see Marvin Harrison finally go. So this is where I think get interesting here, right? If it wasn't already interesting with Marvin Harrison falling. In this scenario, I thought it would be really fun. The Jets put in a lot of effort into shoring up their offensive line. They could probably still use another guy, but at the same time, it's nowhere near in the state that it was coming into free agency. Much, much improved. And so now I think that they do have the ability to move up if they wish. And here, it all depends. Technically, we could send pick 146 back. We would still be within a good value area here. But let's just say that the New York Jets are competing with somebody. The reason that they're moving up here to pick 7, in part, will be Tennessee in this scenario is going to be open to this trade. And Atlanta, Chicago, I think still if Marvin Harrison is available for them, even in this world where he was apparently a little less the stud that we thought he was, I think they would still, there's a very high chance that they would be taking him. So New York Jets not wanting to take any kind of chances and, really going for it this season. So pick 1072, going there for pick 7. Once again, 146 could come back too, possibly, and that would still be a fair deal for both sides. In this case, New York Jets paying a little bit to get up here, but they do have the ability to do that now, and they're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. for Aaron Rodgers. They got a much better offensive line. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze are the two guys that they would probably most likely want as a wide receiver option, opposite Garrett Wilson. That's going to bring us on to the next pick at Atlanta at pick 8. We're going to go pretty much chalk here. This was from day one also my pick for them. Dallas Turner. Now, he's not my number 1 edge rusher, but I do think that he has a really good chance of being the first off the board, whether it's the Falcons or somebody else. But more so than that, specifically if the Falcons are the first one to take an edge off the board, I think that Dallas Turner, of the top 3 edge rushers that we're expecting to go in the first round, is the best fit for their system. So that is part of why I like that. That's going to bring us on to pick 9. And, Chicago's looking at this board. There's obviously good players, routes that they could decide to go. But, they don't have the most capital. I also think they're a possibility to be like a team that would be interested in moving up for a falling Marvin Harrison or just any of these wide receivers, move up to this Los Angeles Chargers spot if that's available to them and doesn't cost the quarterback price tag or something like that. I think that's all very possible. In this situation, we're going to have the Chicago Bears pulling back, Las Vegas Raiders jumping up, just basically jumping up ahead of Tennessee very much specifically. Going to take pick 13 and 77 to come up here to pick 9. Once again, I want to make this clear, like this compensation ultimately does not matter. If these two teams want to trade, we see they have the ability to trade with one another, and there's a million different routes that compensation could end up going, and a lot of it depends upon if there's multiple people bidding for that pick or how desperate a team wants to move back. So many things. It's a negotiation between two parties, and there could be other people also bidding for that or not, which obviously drives up the price if there are more people looking to get into a spot. So when I do these, they're within the realm of reason of past drafts. Just trust on that much, okay? But regardless, it doesn't matter. We're just looking at the first round. That pick 77 is not going to be a part of this. So Las Vegas comes up here to pick 9 in order to take Joe Alt. I could very well see if Joe Alt's there at pick 9, he might have multiple suitors coming up to try to get him, but I don't really think New Orleans wants to move up. And then after that, it's a little bit far, and like Cincinnati's in such a pretty spot at pick 18. It just always seems like what they need is going to fall to them one way or another. So I think it's best for them to be patient. I've traded up with them a couple times, and it just never seems to make sense. Not worth it for their needs and what ends up being available for him here. So that's going to bring up pick 10, which is Tennessee Titans coming back up on the board. And I actually really like this offensive line fit here. We're going to go Troy Fott now for the Titans. And the deciding factor, reason that I end up going with Troy Fott now out of the multiple options, honestly, that they could go here at tackle, comes down to who they took in free agency at running back. They took Tony Pollard, a screen game, lighter, smaller running back who's going to, not ground and pound. He's going to be looking to get around the tackle. And Troy Fott now is a guy who can move incredibly well in open space, so he'll be able to get up to the second level after blocking and help Tony Pollard get even further down the field. Or in screens, he's going to be able to get to a spot and get a really good block in place in order to help secure the screen and have that play go for positive yardage. Troy Fontenot, I think a really, really good fit for apparently, maybe a less hard-nosed kind of Tennessee team that we're going to see. Maybe a little bit more finessed if Tony Pollard's truly going to be their number one, and then their number two, Tyjae Spears. Neither one of them. Big bruising backs. So that's where I like Troy Fontenot here for the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans fans, sound off if you have more internal knowledge about the current coaching staff and what they might be looking for, and if it's not Troy Fontenot. But to me, that seems like a really nice fit. Chargers coming up here at pick 11, and this is, I think, the best world for them if they can move back here to somewhere at this point in the draft, whether it be pick 9 all the way back to I don't think 12's trading out. Pick 11, somewhere in this area, and get Quinton Mitchell at pick 11. Cornerback, really big need of theirs. I think the number one cornerback, obviously, and is now consensus the number one cornerback as well. So love that fit in all ways. Let's move on to pick 12, where I often do go quarterback here for Denver because I just can't imagine them doing anything else if they can't trade back. I imagine the first goal is to trade back. But they have acquired some decent amount of capital. They still don't have that second round or whatever, but they've got a lot more to work with than they had just a few weeks ago. They dropped a lot of people. They got rid of a lot of guys, made a few trades. So they're working with more stuff. And first of all, what I am going to do here is let's say in 2 weeks from now or something, Denver, we see a trade, which this would be very odd, by the way, to see this. But there's a world where maybe the Denver Broncos could convince Carolina to give them pick 101. They're going to give up pick 121, 136. Carolina in a bit of this rebuild. That could make sense. And the whole point of this trade for Denver Broncos, usually let's see if it actually goes through. It did this time. So it's a fair trade. It's just usually Carolina doesn't seem to want to do this, which makes sense at this point. You'd rather see what's available there at 101 before trading it away, just in case there's something that you really, really like. But once again, we're going to do this pre-draft for Denver, and the whole point of this is because they're thinking they're going to end up sitting here and taking a player, most likely. For whatever reason, that's what they're thinking. And they take Brock Bowers. They're feeling confident that they can get their target, Bo Nix, later on in the first round, second round. So what that does value-wise for them is that gives them their 76th pick, that 101 pick that they just picked up, and then a 2025 second-round pick would be able to get them into the top 40 of this draft value-wise, or most specifically, they want to be able to get within the top 46 of the draft, get ahead of the New York Giants, who they might be thinking would be happy to get one of the remaining two quarterbacks that we really think are going to be going in the second round at the latest of this draft, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. In this scenario, that's what they're doing. They're just prepping for that kind of trade by moving those two picks for 101, which is just, I think, a little bit easier to get rid of and more enticing for somebody when you're trying to come up. That's a big jump up, right? So we will actually see more from the Browns a little bit later in this mock draft. Let's move on to pick 13 here with the Chicago Bears, and their move back works out perfectly because I would have had them taking Jared Verse or Laiatu Latu. Jared Verse, actually my second edge rusher, have him ranked over Dallas Turner, and Laiatu Latu is my number one. But like I said, if I'm the Falcons, I'm actually taking Dallas Turner over them, and I still think at the end of the day that the NFL is probably going to like Jared Verse a little bit more than Laiatu Latu. At the very least, there's a higher chance that somebody knocks Laiatu Latu for his medicals that could push him a little bit further down the board yet, even though we're feeling pretty good that that's not going to hold him back too much. Next up on the board, nothing fancy here, very, very much something that you see very often for me, Saints, Olu Fashanu, if he's available. That's the route I think that they would most likely go here, so that's the route that I'm going to have them go. And at pick 15, Indianapolis comes onto the board, and they're definitely a team that needs some cornerback help still, at least as of the time of recording this. Nobody has... There was a little bit of a rumor with them getting L'Jarius Sneed from Kansas City, them being interested in that. That got shot down earlier today on Saturday, but... Who knows? Maybe. There is something that happens on Sunday there, and I don't end up re-recording this video. Seattle Seahawks come up onto the board next at pick 16, and they are a team that I think is open, will be, widely, the league will know, hey, they're available to trade backwards. There's a big gap here from pick 16 to 81 that I don't think they're, dead set on trading back. But if the right offer were to come, I don't think that they would be opposed to moving back. And so here I do end up having the Los Angeles Chargers with their newfound capital here, looking to move up a little bit from pick 23 to pick 16, and that's going to cost them like pretty much dead on pick 69. Nice. And that should get accepted. So Los Angeles Chargers come up here, and what are they looking for? Nothing else but, I believe, do I have this right? Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. So they're going to get themselves a wide receiver and a cornerback, both very, very, love. I would rather Adonai Mitchell, but consensus seems to be Brian Thomas Jr., so we'll kind of stick within that realm instead of Adonai Mitchell over Brian Thomas Jr., just to keep this, once again, a little bit more in line with the most common choices here. Jacksonville coming up onto the board next, and they're not breathing a sigh of relief. There's probably a big gasp of, gosh, some swearing going on there with the last two picks that came off the board. I think Jacksonville would have been happy with either one of them. Instead, gonna take Cooper DeJean here. Maybe it's Nate Wiggins. The thing about Nate Wiggins with that size is I do think that that's going to end up pushing him back into, at the very earliest, like pick 20, towards the back of the first round. I think that's just going to be too much of a concern for teams with how light Nate Wiggins weighed in at the combine. Nonetheless, Cooper DeJean, not a very bad consolation prize. That's going to bring us on to pick 18, which nothing unique, original here. J.C. Latham. This might be the pick that I have done the most over time out of anything, most consistently. J.C. Latham to the Bengals just seems to work out for many reasons very often. So we're going to continue to do that in this mock draft, in part because we're going consensus, and the Los Angeles Rams are up on the clock next. And, it seems to me it's going to be Cooper DeJean or is going to be edge rusher, most like Laiatu Latu would make a lot of sense for them as well, and whoever's available. One of those two, I think, makes a lot of sense. I believe there was a possibility that Jackson Powers Johnson would be of interest to them. Apparently, they have filled in what they're going to do with the center through free agency. I'm not 100% sure on that, so it depends, but that's what the word is. So we'll trust that that is the case, which brings Pittsburgh on, which obviously they are going to go center here. Jackson Powers Johnson makes a lot of sense for them, and it's a good spot of the draft to take them. Now here at pick 21, I've got Miami looking at this, and I really couldn't quite, Byron Murphy obviously would make a lot of sense. One of these offensive linemen would also make a lot of sense. I think maybe Graham Barton would make the most sense here, but Tali Fuanga would also make a lot of sense. I'm not going to lie, I did this a little bit just fudging things because I wanted to get Tali to Philly at the next pick, and so to me I was almost going to go Tally, in part because I also didn't want to go. I'm starting to work on my major 2.0 mock draft, and I didn't want this to be too similar to it, but since that is more predictive, there are some similarities between the two. So here's going to be one of the big plot twists, right? We're going to go a little bit off board here. Does this mean I think that this is what's going to happen in the draft? No, of course, I wouldn't bet on this happening. But remember, I told you, Denver Broncos, I didn't say this, but basically Denver Broncos have now called into every team from pick 20 on down to 45, and they've said, hey, here's what we have to offer you to move into that spot. If you're interested, when your pick comes up, let us know. And it doesn't take too long before Miami says, you know what? We are interested in that. And so let me find Denver. It's, once again, to me, the logic behind this for why Miami might be thinking like this just came down to the fact that they'll be able to get some of their needs with these picks anyways still, not as high quality of those needs, but also they're a team that's kind of strapped for cash, did some things, have been losing players, made some moves, kind of went all in for last year's Super Bowl, and now they're kind of on the downturn of that, and I think they need to do a little mini regroup. So that would be the reasoning that they would actually do this. Once again, it's very hard to imagine this trade, but I'm going to give them pick 76, and this is what's we're gonna do, because the system's not gonna allow this. I think it would be 76, pick 101, and a first rounder very much might be what the cost is here to move all the way up to 21. Because I mean, yes, you're getting a future first rounder, and that's awesome, and the value's probably definitely there. But also, you're moving from 21 to 76. That's a huge jump, and obviously a bet on the future for a team that's still kind of in the now. So, I don't know. But that's also why we got pick 101 in here, why I think that that would be required. But this is going to not get denied every other time that got denied. Okay. I was going to show you actually that one time when I did it, it wouldn't even allow me to trade Denver's 76 and their 2025 first round. I actually ended up having to trade 76 and the 2025 second round for that 21st pick, which I don't think would be enough to move up, but that's what the system was forcing me to do without just forcing the trade. Regardless, doesn't really. I mean, this is a case where it kind of matters what that what they're getting back, because will Miami actually bite for that? I mean, that's a big move. I can see this at pick 40, working out. And you wouldn't have to give up that first round pick for pick 40, but I guess that's why you're giving up the future first here. And it is the Denver Broncos future, next year first round pick. So that's something to weigh there too. I don't know how good we're actually expecting them to be this year, but thanks to their ability to move up here and get their target, maybe they'll be okay, because we're going to give them Bo Nix. This is what happens to me when I do these mock drafts with Denver. I mean, I get nervous for them, and I don't even care. They're not my team, I don't care if they get their quarterback or not. But I just can't imagine. I think they're going to have to be patient with what quarterbacks are still available to them at pick 12. But, and maybe they would be able to move up to like pick 10 or something like that. But ultimately, I think it's best that they remain patient and don't use too much capital in order to get their quarterback. But also, if they don't pick one at pick 12, and the longer that this draft goes along, I gotta imagine there's gonna be like a nervousness that all of a sudden they're gonna miss out on getting any of their quarterbacks, and it's gonna be like Spencer Rattler as their starter. Which, there's a contingent of people out there that would be okay with that, but consensus would not be that you want Spencer Rattler starting for the Broncos next year. Just don't think that that's going to be the thing. Regardless, I already spoiled this next pick here for Philadelphia, pick 22, Tali Fuanga. And at pick 23, Seattle comes back on the clock, and they're going to be very happy that Miami decided to pass up on Byron Murphy, because they're going to get Byron Murphy here. I believe that is actually consensus at like pick 16 for Seattle, so them trading back really didn't lose anything there. So Seattle brass, keep that in mind if the real draft starts to flow something like this when the time comes. At pick 24, a lot of times Marius Mims is still available here. Now that we know that Tyron Smith is not coming back to Dallas, that they need a tackle. So they'll be very happy with that this is such a deep tackle class, because there's probably going to be somebody available here that's worth taking at pick 24 for them. And at pick, and I think that they did get my second ranked tackle here in Marius Mims. Green Bay Packers come up next on the clock. They love speed cornerback, so it would make sense for them to maybe take Nate Wiggins. I don't know for sure, but that's the route I ended up going for them here. Very tough to pick for the Green Bay Packers if there's not a certain contingent of players available for him here. That's part of why I really think that they, with the capital that they have, might be looking to trade up in this draft, but in this scenario, I didn't have them trade up. So that's the route I ended up going, kind of best player available / once again, the speed at cornerback fits really something that they like. It's going to bring us on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who edge makes a lot of sense for them. There's other routes that they could go, but we're going to go Chop Robinson here. And Arizona, you've seen it once, you've seen it a million times. Jerzon Newton to Arizona just makes so much sense here if he is available for them. They did do some work on getting some new guys here in free agency, I believe, at least if I recall correctly, but it wasn't anything that's going to stop him from taking Jerzon if he's available here, in my opinion, depending on who else is available, of course. Buffalo Bills probably wouldn't have minded Jerzon Newton, but they're also not going to mind getting Adonai Mitchell in this draft, so that's the route we will go there. And the Lions come up onto the clock next, and they're going to take a guy who I do not have a first round grade on, and if a lot of teams take him, I'll think that they've made a mistake by taking him this early in the draft. Not that I think they're getting like a bad player or anything, just value-wise, a bit of a mistake. Here for Detroit Lions, I think that this matches exactly what they want. This is, I think, maybe the only case in my needs list where I have edge rusher / interior defensive lineman, as in, I think they probably just need one more guy down there. But the fact that they could get a guy like Darius Robinson who can play both, not even a tweener, really, although I do think that his upside as an edge rusher is limited, which is part of the reason why I have a second-round grade on him. I think he's a perfect fit for the Lions, outside of a different fit that I really like that's in my 2.0, but who's still on the board right now. But I didn't want to go that route, wanted to go a different route here, so we're going to go Darius Robinson here. I think that's kind of consensus right now as well, and it makes a lot of sense, so I get that one. Actually, maybe it's Chop Robinson to the Lions is consensus, which I don't know if Chop's really what the... I don't know, I won't argue against it, I guess. Pick 30... we're going to see another rumor kind of come through here with Jordan Morgan to Baltimore. Obviously, could have gone Graham Barton, could have gone Tyler Guyton, could have gone other positions. But the reason we're going to go Jordan Morgan here is did hear from maybe Trevor Sikkema, I believe, that at the Pro Day, Arizona's Pro Day, 3 teams, I think Seattle, somebody else, and Baltimore all paid good close attention to Jordan Morgan, had private sessions with him. But one team had like 2 private sessions with him and had spent more time with Jordan Morgan, which obviously means they don't have like their mind made up. There's obviously some question marks for them as to why they're looking at Jordan Morgan, but they want to get those questions answered because they obviously have some sort of interest level in them. I'm going to say that those check marks ended up being green check marks and not, big red X's for Jordan Morgan, and we're going to get Baltimore apparently their guy in this situation in Jordan Morgan. I do want to say I believe I talk about in my video where I do my top 15 offensive linemen, which, by the way, videos out for each position. I'm making videos for each position. They're coming out every 3 days with my top 10 roughly players at that position for this year's draft. And Jordan Morgan obviously makes my top 15 offensive lineman, which I did top 15 for the offensive line, and said that I was relegating him to being a guard at this point in time. But apparently, and I was one of the few who was sticking to him being a tackle before the combine, and then after the combine, I was like, those are too short of arms. And the reason I was because he's another guy with really good movement ability. He can get to the spot, even if he doesn't have the lengthy arms. He can still get there, and that will, makes up for his longer arms, just the fact that he can get to a spot so quick. Jordan Morgan, arms are an issue. Apparently, some teams are still considering him to be a tackle, though. So that's also good. Ravens are going to have the freedom here. I think that their bigger need is at guard right now. But either way, Jordan Morgan should be an asset to them. Offensive line, they do need a little bit of help. And we're going to see a trend here. Offensive line, San Francisco, also an area that they need help. And I think Graham Barton makes a lot of sense for them. That might be consensus. And here at pick 32, we're going to give Kansas City a guy who I have lower. But from what we can tell, not only from the consensus board, but from everything media-wise, apparently the NFL is high on. I'm still not sold on that, but Tyler Guyton, and I don't mean that like I'm a Tyler Guyton hater. Just don't quite think first round. I think he's getting a little more buzz than he needed, and I meant to pick a guy for Carolina. Things changed after the draft. Obviously, wide receiver is very much in play still for Carolina. Most likely I'd probably still go wide receiver. I also think that they very well might be looking to move back from there, but in this draft I already had them move a different spot back for multiple picks with the Denver Broncos. They probably won't want to do that with 2 different picks. So we'll say that they went wide receiver, Lad McConkey or something like that. Love that for them. All right, there you go on the screen. Yeah, you can pause it or whatever. You can see the entirety of this week's Monday mock draft. Once again, this is for fun, so hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you like, dislike about it for your teams, hopefully as cordially as possible, but bring on the hate too, whatever works. Peace out. I love you all. Have a good one.